Picture this. You're hiking through a lush, untouched rainforest, vines brushing your shoulders, the air thick with the scent of earth and blossoms. Suddenly, through a break in the trees, something impossible rises before you: stone towers carved with intricate patterns, stairways climbing toward the sky, silent and majestic. Or maybe you're crossing a sun-scorched desert, nothing but sand and wind for miles, when your foot strikes not rock, but the edge of a forgotten wall, half buried yet unmistakably grand. These aren't just scenes from adventure films. All around our planet, hidden in plain sight, lie the remains of civilizations so advanced, so visionary, that their creations still leave us breathless centuries, even millennia later. We're about to embark on a journey to 20 of these architectural miracles, places where human ambition met divine inspiration, and where stone and story intertwine. From temples swallowed by jungle to palaces reclaimed by the sea, each of these sites tells a universal tale of cultures that reached for the stars, of artists and engineers whose names are lost to time, but whose legacies stand firm. You'll witness cities carved entirely from cliffs, pyramids aligned with the cosmos, and statues guarding shores long after their creators vanished. These are more than ruins. They are frozen moments of triumph, mystery, and sometimes tragedy, waiting for us to listen. So come with us as we cross continents and dive into history, exploring the hidden wonders that continue to captivate explorers, historians, and dreamers. Whether you're drawn by the thrill of discovery, the love of beauty, or the simple wonder of how humanity has always dared to create the extraordinary, this journey is for you. Get ready to see the world through new eyes and to rediscover the awe that lies waiting just beneath the surface of time. Our journey begins in the arid canyons of southern Jordan, where the very rock seems to bleed into a spectrum of rose, orange, and deep crimson. This is the entrance to Petra, a city that didn't just rise from the desert, but was painstakingly carved directly into it. For over 6 centuries, this was the dazzling capital of the Nabatean kingdom, a civilization of master traders who controlled the lucrative incense routes linking Arabia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. Imagine the scene 2,000 years ago, a bustling metropolis hidden within a natural fortress of rock, its wealth echoing in the clinking of camel bells and the haggling of merchants dealing in spices, silks, and rare perfumes. The approach to Petra is an experience in itself, a dramatic half-mile walk through a narrow, winding gorge known as the Sick. The towering sandstone walls, soaring up to 200 feet high, cast ever-changing shadows as the sun moves across the sky. Just as you feel enveloped by the rock, the passage narrows and then, suddenly, frames a breathtaking sight, the intricately carved facade of Al-Kosneh, or the Treasury. This is Petra's most iconic masterpiece, standing nearly 130 feet tall. Despite its name, it was most likely a royal tomb or a temple. Its Hellenistic-style columns, statues of gods, and ornate urns all painstakingly chiseled from the cliff face. The precision is staggering, each detail from the wings of eagles to the folds in stone robes, revealing an artistry that rivals any classical structure built from the ground up. But the Nabateans were more than just artists. They were brilliant hydraulic engineers who turned a desert into an oasis. In a region receiving only about 6 inches of rain a year, they constructed a complex network of channels, dams, and cisterns that captured winter floodwaters and stored them for the dry season. They lined these waterways with waterproof cement and carved thousands of ceramic pipes to control the flow, providing fresh water to homes, lush gardens, and even public fountains. This ingenious system supported a population of perhaps 30,000 people, allowing Petra to flourish in an environment that would otherwise be uninhabitable. It was a testament to their ability to not just conquer nature, but to collaborate with it. After its peak, Petra's influence gradually waned. Shifts in trade routes moving towards sea-based commerce diminished its economic power, and a devastating earthquake in the year 363 damaged its vital water management system. The city was eventually abandoned, and for over 1,000 years, its existence faded into legend, known only to local Bedouin tribes. It remained hidden from the Western world until 1812, when a daring Swiss explorer, Johann Ludwig Burckhardt, disguised himself as an Arab scholar and convinced a guide to take him to the fabled lost city. His report sent shockwaves through Europe, unveiling a wonder that had been shrouded in mystery for centuries. Walking through Petra today, past the towering tombs of kings and the simple chambers of commoners, you can't help but feel the weight of time. The facades, weathered by wind and sand, still whisper stories of immense wealth, spiritual devotion, and human ingenuity. Its abandonment serves as a powerful, humbling reminder that no civilization, no matter how prosperous or advanced, is permanent. Petra stands as a beautiful, silent monument to the rise and fall of empires, a city of stone that continues to captivate us not just for what it was, but for the enduring mystery of what caused its final, slow fade into the desert sands. Now let's ascend from the desert sands to the mist-shrouded peaks of the Andes, where the air grows thin and the clouds cling to mountain ridges like a soft, persistent blanket. Here, at an altitude of nearly 8,000 feet, the Incas performed what might be their most breathtaking feat of architectural genius: the construction of Machu Picchu. Unlike the rock-carven city of Petra, this citadel was built with the mountain, its structures emerging from the very bedrock in a symphony of stone and sky. It is a place that feels both of this world and entirely separate from it, a secret sanctuary hidden for centuries. The journey to reach it is part of its magic. You can almost feel the anticipation building as you wind your way up the Urubamba River Valley, the steep, green slopes rising on all sides. Then you see it, a series of elegant stone terraces cascading down a narrow ridge, with granite buildings perfectly nestled between two dramatic peaks. The precision of the construction is immediately astounding. The Incas were master stonemasons, cutting and fitting massive granite blocks so precisely that not even a razor blade can slip between them. They used no mortar, yet their walls have withstood countless earthquakes over 5 centuries. The secret was in their craftsmanship. The stones are slightly convex, locking together during tremors before settling perfectly back into place, a dynamic dance of engineering that static, rigid structures could never achieve. But Machu Picchu was far more than just a fortress of perfectly fitted stone. Its entire layout is a profound reflection of the Inca worldview, a deep and sacred connection between the earth and the cosmos. The site is meticulously aligned with celestial events. During the winter solstice, the sun's rays stream through a specific window of the Temple of the Sun, illuminating a ceremonial stone at its center. Another structure, the Intihuatana stone, often called a hitching post for the sun, was precisely carved to point directly at the sun during the equinoxes, a tool for both astronomical observation and ritual. It was a calendar in stone, a way to harmonize human activity with the cycles of the universe. This harmony extended to how the Incas interacted with the land itself. The vast, sweeping agricultural terraces that contour the mountainside are a marvel of practical engineering and environmental wisdom. They were not merely flat spaces for crops, they were a complex drainage system. Layers of gravel, sand, and topsoil prevented waterlogging during the heavy rainy seasons, while also preventing erosion and landslides. Some historians believe these terraces also served as a massive laboratory for growing crops at different altitudes, allowing the Incas to cultivate a stunning variety of plants. Even today, these terraces function perfectly, a testament to a sustainable approach to agriculture that we are still striving to relearn. The great enduring mystery of Machu Picchu, however, is its purpose. Why was such an elaborate and spiritually significant city built in such a remote and inaccessible location? Was it a royal estate for the Emperor Pachacuti, a secluded retreat for the elite to escape the bustle of the capital, Cusco? Or was it a sacred religious site, a lacta, home to chosen women known as Aklas who served the sun god Inti? The absence of any written records from the Incas themselves means we may never know for certain. This ambiguity only adds to its enigmatic power, allowing every visitor to feel the whisper of their own interpretation among the silent stones. Its disappearance from global knowledge is as fascinating as its construction. Abandoned around the time of the Spanish conquest in the 16th century, it was never found or plundered by the conquistadors. The jungle slowly reclaimed it, hiding it from the world until a young American historian, Hiram Bingham, guided by local Quechua farmers, was led to the site in 1911. While he famously brought it to international attention, dubbing it the Lost City of the Incas, the truth is it was never truly lost to the people who lived in the surrounding valleys. They always knew it was there, a sacred part of their heritage, guarding its secrets in the clouds. From the cloud-shrouded peaks of the Andes, we now journey to the heart of Southeast Asia, to a sprawling complex that emerges from the Cambodian jungle like a dream carved in stone. Angkor Wat is not merely a temple, it is an entire cosmic vision rendered in sandstone and laterite, a breathtaking fusion of spiritual ambition and architectural genius on a scale that is almost incomprehensible. Built in the early 12th century by King Suryavarman II, it was originally dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu, intended as both his earthly residence and the king's own funerary temple. But its story is one of transformation, a sacred site that gracefully evolved with the spiritual currents of time, eventually becoming a cornerstone of Theravada Buddhism, which it remains to this day. The first sight of Angkor Wat is a moment that stays with you forever. To approach it, you must first cross a vast moat over 600 feet wide, which encircles the temple like a shimmering band of silver. This isn't just a defensive feature, it represents the cosmic ocean that encircles the world in Hindu mythology. Crossing the long stone causeway, the temple's 5 iconic lotus bud towers rise majestically against the horizon, their silhouette a symbol of Cambodia itself. The central tower soars to a height of over 200 feet, representing the holy Mount Meru, the axis of the universe and the home of the gods. The entire temple complex is a microcosm of the Hindu cosmos, with concentric galleries and courtyards symbolizing the mountain ranges and oceans that surround the center of all creation. Step inside, and you are walking through an epic narrative carved in stone. The outer gallery walls are covered with over 1,200 square meters of the most exquisite bas-reliefs in the world. These are not mere decorations, they are a library of mythology and history. One panel depicts the churning of the ocean of milk, a dramatic story of gods and demons cooperating to stir the cosmic ocean and release the elixir of immortality. Another shows a detailed procession from the reign of King Suryavarman II, a vivid snapshot of his military might and courtly life. The level of detail is staggering. Every strand of hair on an Apsara dancer, every fold in a soldier's uniform, every expression of a mythical creature is rendered with an artist's loving precision. It is a continuous stone canvas that invites you to read the stories of an entire belief system. The genius of the Khmer Empire, however, extended far beyond the temple walls. Angkor Wat was the spiritual heart of a vast metropolis, Angkor, which was supported by a hydraulic engineering network of staggering sophistication. The Khmers mastered the monsoon. They built massive reservoirs called barrages, along with a complex system of canals, dikes, and channels that captured, stored, and distributed water throughout the year. This system did more than just prevent flooding. It enabled the empire to produce 3 or 4 rice crops annually, supporting a population that may have exceeded 1 million people at its peak. This mastery over water was the true source of Angkor's power, turning a seasonal climate into a perpetual engine of agricultural and economic prosperity. Yet, despite this brilliance, the great city of Angkor was eventually reclaimed by the very jungle it had tamed. By the 15th century, the center of power had shifted, and the complex water management system, perhaps damaged by climate shifts or overwhelmed by the demands of a growing population, began to fail. The great metropolis was gradually abandoned, and for centuries Angkor Wat slept, its towers embraced by the roots of strangler figs and silk cotton trees. It was never truly lost. Buddhist monks maintained a presence there throughout, but to the Western world, its rediscovery by French explorers in the 19th century was a sensation, revealing a lost civilization whose artistic and technical achievements rivaled anything in the ancient world. Today, Angkor Wat stands as a powerful symbol of cultural endurance. It is a place where Hindu mythology and Buddhist devotion coexist peacefully in the same sacred space. It is a testament to an empire that could move mountains of stone and redirect rivers, yet ultimately yielded to the relentless forces of nature and time. But it is not a relic frozen in the past. It is a living, breathing center of worship, where the chants of monks still echo through the same halls that once echoed with prayers to Vishnu. This seamless blend of the ancient and the eternal, of ruin and resilience, is what makes Angkor Wat not just an archaeological site, but a timeless monument to the human spirit's quest for the divine. Leaving the jungles of Cambodia behind, we now travel westward to the sun-drenched coast of the Aegean Sea, to a city that was once one of the most important ports in the entire Roman Empire. Welcome to Ephesus, a place where the grandeur of Rome is not just a story in a history book, but a tangible reality you can walk through. Unlike the sacred isolation of Machu Picchu or the overgrown temples of Angkor, Ephesus feels almost startlingly familiar. Its marble-paved streets, its grand public squares, and the remnants of its daily life offer a remarkably clear window into the ancient world, making the people who lived there feel immediately present, their voices almost audible on the breeze. Your journey into this ancient metropolis would likely begin on its main thoroughfare, the Curate Street. As your feet tread the same smooth marble stones that were worn by the sandals of Roman citizens 2,000 years ago, you are flanked by the foundations of shops, homes, and public monuments. The air would have been filled with the sounds of commerce, of philosophers debating under shaded colonnades, and the distant cheers from the great theater. The most breathtaking sight, the moment that truly defines Ephesus for many, appears at the end of a downward slope, the magnificent facade of the Library of Celsus. This two-story marvel, meticulously reconstructed from its original pieces, was not merely a repository for scrolls. It was a monumental tomb for the Roman senator Tiberius Julius Celsus Pulmenus, whose sarcophagus lies beneath it. Its elegantly carved niches once held statues representing the virtues of wisdom, knowledge, intelligence, and valor, a powerful statement about the value this society placed on learning and character. But the true genius of Ephesus, and indeed of Roman civilization, is revealed not just in its grand monuments, but in its astonishingly modern amenities that catered to everyday comfort and social life. Just off the main street, you would find a public latrine, a surprisingly sophisticated structure featuring rows of marble seats with keyhole-shaped openings set over a flowing channel of water. This was no private affair. It was a social hub where men would gather to discuss politics and business in a communal setting. Even more impressive were the sophisticated terrace houses of the wealthy, which boasted underfloor heating systems known as hypocausts. Furnaces would heat air that was then channeled through clay pipes beneath the beautiful mosaic floors, warming the entire home. For the average citizen, the city offered massive public baths, complex fountains supplying fresh water, and even a brothel whose advertising, some archaeologists suggest, might be found in a famous footprint mosaic directing the way. This wasn't just a city, it was a highly engineered machine for living. Long before its Roman zenith, however, Ephesus was already a place of legendary significance, thanks to one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Just a short distance from the main ruins lies a largely empty field, occupied by a single reconstructed column and a scattering of marble fragments. It requires a powerful act of imagination to see this quiet site as it once was, the glorious Temple of Artemis. This temple was so colossal and so lavishly decorated that the ancient historian Antipater of Sidon wrote that when he saw it, the other 6 wonders were placed in the shade. Built entirely of marble, its roof was supported by over 120 columns, each standing 60 feet high, and it housed a revered statue of the goddess Artemis. Though destroyed and rebuilt multiple times, its final incarnation was so magnificent that its destruction by arson in 356 BC, allegedly on the night Alexander the Great was born, was considered a tragedy across the Greek world. Today, those few remains are a poignant reminder that even the greatest human achievements are fragile. Ephesus also holds a profound place in religious history, standing at a crossroads between paganism and early Christianity. It is believed that the Apostle John spent his later years here, and tradition holds that he brought Mary, the mother of Jesus, to live in a small house on a nearby hillside, a site now known as Miramana and visited by pilgrims of many faiths. Most significantly, many scholars believe it was in Ephesus that John wrote the 4th Gospel of the New Testament. The city's importance to the early church is underscored by the fact that the massive Church of Mary, one of the earliest dedicated to the Virgin, was built here, and Ephesus was the location of the Third Ecumenical Council in 431 AD. To walk these streets is to tread the same ground where foundational texts of Christianity were composed and where pivotal theological debates were held. The ultimate fate of this magnificent city, however, is perhaps its most enduring lesson. Ephesus's prosperity was entirely dependent on its access to the sea. But the very river that brought life to the city, the Cayster, also carried a silent sentence. Over centuries, silt from upstream farming gradually filled in the great harbor. Despite desperate attempts to dredge it and even to redirect the river, the Romans and those who came after them were fighting a losing battle against geology. The coastline slowly crept westward, stranding the city inland and cutting it off from the trade routes that were its lifeblood. Malaria infested the stagnant marshes that were once a bustling port, and the city was abandoned. Ephesus stands as a powerful, stone-carved cautionary tale about humanity's relationship with the environment, a stark reminder that even the mightiest empire, with all its engineering prowess, is ultimately vulnerable to the slow, relentless forces of nature. Our journey now takes us to the high plateau of central Mexico, to a valley that holds one of the most profound and perplexing mysteries of the ancient Americas. Long before the Aztecs rose to power and gave it the awe-inspired name we know it by today, Teotihuacan, the City of the Gods, was already a colossal, silent ruin. Imagine the scene that greeted the Aztec people when they first discovered this place. Two massive pyramids and a long, grand avenue stretching across the landscape, so immense and so perfectly aligned that they believed it could only have been built by giants. For us today, the mystery only deepens. This was once one of the largest cities on the entire planet, a bustling metropolis that rivaled ancient Rome or Constantinople in its scale, and yet we do not know who founded it, what language its people spoke, or even what they called their home. Walking into Teotihuacan is an experience that transcends mere sightseeing. It is a physical journey into scale and alignment. Your path is laid out for you along the Avenue of the Dead, a central thoroughfare that runs for over 3 miles, connecting the city's most important ceremonial plazas. The Aztecs gave it this somber name because they believed the numerous smaller platforms lining the avenue were tombs, though archaeologists now think they were likely temples or elite residences. Your eyes are immediately drawn northward, where the colossal Pyramid of the Moon marks the avenue's terminus, its form echoing the shape of the sacred mountain Cerro Gordo behind it. But it is the Pyramid of the Sun that truly dominates the landscape. This is the third largest pyramid in the world, a behemoth constructed from over 3 million tons of stone and earth. To stand at its base is to feel humbled. To climb its 248 steep steps is to participate in a ritual that has been performed for nearly 2 millennia, culminating in a breathtaking view of a city plan so precise it feels divinely ordained. This precision is no accident. The entire city is a mirror of the cosmos, a carefully engineered reflection of the universe as its builders understood it. The layout is aligned with celestial movements with an accuracy that stuns modern astronomers. The Pyramid of the Sun is positioned so that its western facade directly faces the setting sun on the days of its zenith passage, a key solar event. The Ciudadela, a vast sunken courtyard, and the Temple of the Feathered Serpent at its heart are aligned perpendicular to the Avenue of the Dead, creating a precise east-west axis. Some researchers have even proposed that the placement of the pyramids relative to each other and to the surrounding mountains corresponds to the distances between planets in our solar system. Every stone, every avenue seems to have been placed with a profound understanding of astronomy, mathematics, and a desire to anchor their city to the very fabric of the cosmos. Beyond the overwhelming scale of its pyramids, Teotihuacan was a vibrant, living city of astonishing sophistication and artistry. It was a planned urban center, divided into districts for artisans, merchants, and a diverse population that may have exceeded 125,000 people at its peak. Instead of palaces glorifying individual rulers, archaeologists have found evidence of communal living compounds where multiple families resided around a central courtyard, suggesting a social structure that may have been more collective or oligarchic than autocratic. The true soul of its people, however, is revealed not in grand statues of kings, but in the stunning murals that once adorned the walls of these compounds. Unlike the later Maya, the Teotihuacanos did not carve stone stelae to celebrate individual conquests. Instead, they painted. Their murals are explosions of color and symbolism, depicting a lush paradise filled with flowing water, blooming flowers, and deities like the great goddess and the feathered serpent. These were not scenes of war, but visions of fertility, abundance, and a spiritual connection to nature, offering a glimpse into a worldview that valued harmony and prosperity. The influence of this mighty city rippled across ancient Mesoamerica like a stone dropped in a pond. Teotihuacan was the undisputed superpower of its day, its reach felt from the Maya lowlands to the Zapotec highlands of Oaxaca. We find evidence of its presence in the imported green obsidian from its workshops, a prized material across the region. We see its architectural style copied in distant cities. Most dramatically, historical records from the Maya city of Tikal, written centuries later, describe the arrival of warriors from the west in the year 378 AD, an event that led to the installation of a new dynasty with clear ties to Teotihuacan. This was not necessarily a violent empire built on conquest. It was a cultural and economic hegemony, a network of influence that made the city of gods the trendsetter and the power broker for an entire era. And then it was over. Around the year 550 AD, something cataclysmic happened. A great fire swept through the city, specifically targeting and burning the temples and palaces along the Avenue of the Dead. This was not an accident, it was an act of deliberate, violent destruction. But who did it? Was it a revolt by a long-oppressed lower class, an invasion by a rival state, or an internal power struggle that tore the society apart? The evidence is charred and silent. There are no tales of conquest, no inscribed records of a fall. The people simply left, abandoning their magnificent city to the elements. Within a century, the place was deserted. The silence that followed is perhaps the most deafening mystery of all. A metropolis that shaped a continent, that moved mountains to build pyramids to the heavens, vanished without leaving a single word to tell us its name or the story of its end, leaving only the stone skeletons of its ambitions for us to ponder. Leaving the ordered grids and cosmic alignments of the Americas behind, we now journey to a different kind of marvel, one that speaks not of celestial precision but of earthbound power and profound cultural achievement. In the southeastern hills of Zimbabwe, surrounded by a landscape of granite boulders and acacia trees, stand the silent, majestic ruins of Great Zimbabwe. This is not a city of gods, but a city of kings and merchants, a sprawling complex of stone that proudly represents the largest and most significant ancient settlement found anywhere in sub-Saharan Africa. For centuries, its very existence posed a question that some were unwilling to answer, making it not just an architectural wonder, but a monument to a reclaimed history. The first thing that strikes you about Great Zimbabwe is the sheer scale of its stonework, all achieved without a single drop of mortar. The Shona people, who built this city between the 11th and 15th centuries, were masters of dry stone construction. They painstakingly quarried and shaped countless blocks of granite, stacking them into walls that curve and climb with the natural contours of the land. The most iconic section is the Great Enclosure, a vast ovular wall that soars over 30 feet high in some places and stretches nearly 800 feet around. Walking inside, you are confronted by its most enigmatic feature, a solid conical tower that rises alongside the inner wall. Its purpose remains one of archaeology's charming puzzles. Was it a grain silo, a symbolic representation of a granary, a phallic fertility symbol, or perhaps the base of a platform for an important ruler? The fact that we don't know for certain only adds to the sense of mystery that permeates the air, inviting you to imagine the rituals and daily life that once filled this sacred space. This was far more than just a ceremonial center. It was the beating heart of a powerful and wealthy kingdom that controlled a vast commercial network. Great Zimbabwe's power was built on gold and ivory. From its strategic position on the central plateau, the kingdom commanded the trade routes that stretched from the interior goldfields all the way to the Swahili coast ports on the Indian Ocean. Arab and Swahili merchants would bring glass beads, Chinese celadon pottery, and Persian textiles, trading them for the precious resources carried to the city by a network of tributary chiefs. Archaeologists have found countless artifacts from these distant lands within the ruins, proof positive that Great Zimbabwe was a cosmopolitan hub, fully integrated into the medieval global economy. The ruler who resided in the hill complex overlooking the rest of the city was not just a spiritual leader but a shrewd economic mastermind, amassing wealth and influence that made his city a legend along the entire eastern coast of Africa. This legendary status, however, collided violently with the racist ideologies of European colonialism in the 19th century. When white settlers and explorers like Cecil Rhodes encountered these magnificent ruins, they simply could not and would not believe that they were the product of indigenous African genius. The notion contradicted their colonial narrative of a vacant land populated by primitive peoples awaiting civilization. So they invented fanciful and absurd origins, attributing the city's construction to everyone but the Shona people. It must have been the Phoenicians, they argued, or the Queen of Sheba, or even King Solomon's mines. For nearly a century, this willful misinterpretation was used to justify land dispossession and colonial rule, literally stealing the history of a people to steal their land. It was only through meticulous modern archaeological work, beginning in the mid-20th century, that the truth was irrefutably established. Carbon dating, analysis of construction techniques, and the study of Shona oral traditions all converged on a single, undeniable conclusion. Great Zimbabwe was conceived, designed, and built by the ancestors of the people who still live in the region today. When the nation gained its independence from Britain in 1980, it chose this symbol of pre-colonial achievement and pride as its new name, Zimbabwe, which derives from the Shona term Dzimba Mabwe, meaning houses of stone. The ruins thus transformed from a site of colonial denial into a powerful national emblem of cultural endurance and self-determination. Yet, for all its power and prestige, Great Zimbabwe, like so many other wonders on our list, was eventually abandoned around the middle of the 15th century. The reasons are still debated by historians. One compelling theory points to environmental degradation. A large population and their grazing cattle may have simply exhausted the local resources, leading to deforestation and soil erosion that could no longer support the city. Another suggests that the lucrative gold trade routes may have shifted northward, draining the city of its economic lifeblood and causing a political crisis. Perhaps it was a combination of factors, a slow unraveling of the delicate balance between people, power, and the environment. The departure was not a sudden flight but a gradual migration, the population likely splintering into smaller states that carried the legacy of Great Zimbabwe's culture and architectural skill with them. Its silent, empty walls now stand as a poignant lesson in sustainability, a reminder that even the most powerful and wealthy societies must live in harmony with their environment, or risk becoming a memory etched in stone. From the vast stone walls of Great Zimbabwe, we now travel to a landscape that feels almost otherworldly, a place where immense boulders are strewn across the earth as if by a giant's hand. This is the setting for Hampi, the one-time capital of the mighty Vijayanagara Empire, a city that in the 14th and 15th centuries was arguably one of the largest and most magnificent in the entire world. To walk among its ruins is to step into a sprawling open-air museum of epic mythology, breathtaking innovation, and a level of prosperity that dazzled travelers from across the globe. Unlike the silent mystery of Teotihuacan, Hampi's story is vividly recorded in the stone of its countless temples, each one a chapter in a saga of devotion, power, and ultimately tragic destruction. Your introduction to Hampi is often through its living heart, the Virupaksha temple. This isn't just a ruin preserved for tourists. It is a place of active, vibrant worship that has continued without interruption for over 13 centuries, even through the empire's fall. As you approach through the towering gopuram, or gateway, covered in intricate carvings of deities and mythological scenes, the air fills with the scent of incense and the sound of chanting priests and ringing bells. The temple is dedicated to Lord Shiva in his form as Virupaksha, the consort of the local goddess Pampa, from whom the area derives its name. Within its sacred precincts, you can witness a miracle of ancient engineering. A small, dark chamber with a pinhole opening that projects an inverted image of the main gopuram onto a wall inside. A clever camera obscura effect that has mystified and delighted visitors for hundreds of years. This seamless blend of deep spirituality and clever science is the defining characteristic of Hampi. A short journey through the surreal boulder fields brings you to the absolute pinnacle of Vijayanagara artistry, the Vitala Temple complex. This is where the architects and sculptors of the empire truly outdid themselves, creating structures that seem to defy the very nature of stone. The temple's masterpiece is its grand mandapa, or hall, famed throughout the world for its musical pillars. These are not merely decorative, they are ingenious sonic instruments. Each of the 56 primary pillars is surrounded by a group of smaller, thinner pillars that emit a distinct, clear musical note when tapped gently. The pillars are said to represent various instruments of the era, from drums to stringed instruments, and skilled performers could once have played entire melodies on this stone orchestra. The precision required to carve granite to such specific acoustic properties remains a stunning, almost inexplicable feat of engineering. Standing proudly in the courtyard of the Vitala Temple is Hampi's most iconic symbol, the majestic stone chariot. This isn't a chariot built from stone blocks, but a monumental sculpture of a chariot, carved in situ from a single massive piece of granite. It is a representation of the chariot of the sun god, Surya, and is designed to look as if it is in motion, with stone wheels that were once capable of turning on their axes. The chariot is actually a shrine, originally housing an image of Garuda, the eagle mount of Lord Vishnu. Its image has become synonymous with Hampi itself, a perfect emblem of divine procession, and the empire's ambition to create eternal beauty from the most durable of materials. It is a testament to a culture that saw no boundary between art, architecture, and devotion. Beyond the temples, the scale of Hampi's urban planning reveals an empire of immense wealth and sophistication. The royal enclosure contained massive platforms where the king would hold audiences, a stepped tank for ritual bathing with impeccable geometric precision, and the fascinating Mahanavami Dibba, a tall, pyramid-like structure from which the royalty would watch grand parades and festivals. The city was also an engineering marvel in its management of water. An elaborate aqueduct system carried water from the Tungabhadra River to tanks and canals throughout the city, ensuring a reliable supply for its citizens and the lush royal gardens. The remains of these aquatic structures hint at a quality of life and civic planning that was remarkably advanced. This incredible wealth was built on a foundation of robust international trade. Hampi was a global crossroads, its bazaars teeming with merchants from Persia, Portugal, and beyond. Diamonds, spices, and fine textiles changed hands in markets that stretched for miles, with rows of pillared pavilions that once provided shade for countless traders. Historical accounts from Persian and Portuguese visitors describe a city of unparalleled splendor, with palaces adorned with gold and precious stones, and a level of opulence that left them in awe. The empire's power was not just spiritual and artistic, it was profoundly economic, controlling key trade routes and commanding respect from distant nations. This golden age, however, came to a sudden and catastrophic end in the year 1565. The Vijayanagara Empire faced a coalition of rival sultanates in the Battle of Terracotta. In a devastating turn of events, key commanders defected mid-battle, leading to a crushing defeat for the empire. the victorious armies then descended upon the magnificent, undefended capital city of Hampi. What followed was an orgy of destruction that lasted for months. Temples were systematically desecrated, markets were looted and burned, and grand palaces were reduced to rubble. The empire never recovered from this blow, and the city was abandoned, left to be slowly reclaimed by the sands of time and the embrace of the giant boulders that had always watched over it. The silence that fell over Hampi was the silence of a severed civilization, its grand narrative cut short in a single, brutal chapter. Our journey now takes us to the heart of the Syrian desert, to a place where the lines between East and West, between legend and history, were not just blurred but beautifully woven together into a unique and powerful cultural tapestry. Palmyra emerges from the vast, empty sands like a mirage of columns and arches, a testament to the wealth and ambition that once flowed through this crucial crossroads of the ancient world. This was not a city built by a single empire, but a vibrant, autonomous hub that mastered the art of cultural fusion, creating an architectural style that was entirely its own, a breathtaking blend of Greco-Roman grandeur and intricate Persian detail. To walk its grand colonnade was to walk through the bustling center of a globalized world 2,000 years ago. The spine of this magnificent city was its nearly 4,000-foot-long colonnaded street, a processional way that cut through the urban heart of Palmyra, connecting the Temple of Bel with other key monuments. Imagine the scene in its heyday. Shaded by covered sidewalks, this avenue would have been a cacophony of languages and a parade of cultures. Caravan merchants from Persia, Roman officials in their togas, and local Palmyran elites in their distinctive patterned robes would have mingled beneath hundreds of towering Corinthian columns. What made these columns uniquely Palmyran were the small, projecting brackets about halfway up, which once held bronze statues of the city's most prominent and wealthy citizens. This was a city that proudly celebrated its own people, immortalizing its merchant princes and benefactors in a very public hall of fame, turning a functional street into a gallery of civic pride and personal legacy. At the spiritual core of the city stood the Temple of Bel, a monument that perfectly embodied Palmyra's hybrid soul. From the outside, it presented the classic look of a Roman temple, with its grand proportions and imposing lintels. But step inside, and the layout revealed a different tradition entirely. Unlike most Roman temples that featured a central statue at the end of a long hall, the Holy of Holies inside the Temple of Bel was designed in the Semitic style, with the cult statues of the gods placed in a central shrine that was oriented not lengthwise but across the width of the room. This sacred space was dedicated not to a Roman god but to the Mesopotamian deity Bel, a masterful syncretism of the Babylonian god Baal and the Hellenistic god Zeus. The temple's walls were adorned with carved reliefs showing priests in Persian-style trousers and armor, performing rituals that would have been familiar across the East. It was a place where a Roman could feel at home with its facade, while a traveler from Mesopotamia would find comfort in its worship. The story of Palmyra, however, is forever intertwined with the legendary figure who dared to challenge Rome itself, Queen Zenobia. In the 3rd century AD, with the Roman Empire weakened by internal crisis and external threats, this brilliant and ambitious ruler saw an opportunity for greatness. Under her leadership, Palmyra expanded its influence dramatically, its armies conquering Egypt and much of Anatolia. For a brief, spectacular moment, Zenobia ruled a vast swath of the Eastern Roman Empire from her desert capital, even going so far as to mint coins with her own image and that of her son, declaring their independence and her title as Augusta or Empress. She presided over a cultured court, patronizing scholars and philosophers, and positioning herself as the heir to Cleopatra. Her rebellion was ultimately crushed by the Roman Emperor Aurelian, who captured the city and brought Zenobia back to Rome in golden chains, a fate that has fueled romantic legends ever since. Her audacious gamble, though a failure, cemented Palmyra's place in history not just as a trading post, but as the seat of an empress who nearly changed the map of the ancient world. Tragically, the modern world has inflicted a new layer of destruction upon Palmyra's stones, underscoring the heartbreaking fragility of our shared cultural heritage in the face of human conflict. During the Syrian civil war, the site fell under the control of extremist groups who deliberately targeted its most iconic structures for demolition. The Temple of Bel was reduced to rubble, with only a single arch left standing amidst the wreckage. The monumental arch that once framed so many breathtaking photographs was blown apart. Tower tombs that had stood for millennia were systematically destroyed. This was not collateral damage. It was a calculated act of cultural cleansing, an attempt to erase a history that represented the very diversity and intercultural dialogue that these groups sought to destroy. The world watched in horror as satellites captured the before and after images, a digital tombstone for what was lost. Yet, even in the face of such wanton destruction, the human spirit's drive to preserve and remember endures. In the aftermath, archaeologists and preservationists from around the globe have been working tirelessly, using every tool at their disposal. They are sifting through the debris, cataloging every fragment, and using advanced photogrammetry, creating 3D models from thousands of old tourist photographs to digitally map the site with millimeter accuracy. The ambition is not necessarily to rebuild exactly as it was, which many argue would create a modern replica, but to carefully document and, where possible, stabilize and anastylosis reassemble original pieces, so that future generations can still understand and appreciate the scale and artistry of what was there. This painstaking work is a powerful act of defiance, a statement that while extremists can smash stone, they cannot so easily erase meaning, memory, or the enduring value of beauty born from cultural exchange. Palmyra's stones, though scarred, continue to tell their story of a caravan city that once connected worlds, a story that we are now, more than ever, committed to keeping alive. Leaving the sun-bleached columns of Palmyra behind, we now plunge into the dense, living heart of the Guatemalan rainforest, where the air itself feels ancient, thick with moisture and the echoing calls of howler monkeys. This is Tikal, a city that didn't just occupy the jungle, it became it, a breathtaking fusion of monumental architecture and untamed nature that stands as the supreme achievement of classic Maya civilization. To experience Tikal is to understand that for the Maya, the boundary between the earthly and the divine, between the human world and the natural one, was not a line to be crossed, but a seamless continuum to be celebrated. Here, the gods did not live in a distant heaven. They resided in the movement of the stars, the growth of the corn, and the very stones of the temples that pierce the jungle canopy. Your approach to the city's core is a gradual unveiling, a slow build of anticipation. You walk along causeways that once connected sprawling plazas, the same stone-paved paths trod by Maya nobles and priests over 1,000 years ago. The jungle is a constant, vibrant presence, with ceiba trees sacred to the Maya as the symbolic ladder connecting the underworld, the earth, and the heavens towering overhead, their roots gripping the foundations of ancient platforms. And then, through a break in the emerald green, you see it for the first time, the awe-inspiring silhouette of Temple I, the temple of the great jaguar. Soaring 154 feet into the sky, its steep, narrow staircase seems to launch directly toward the sun. This was not merely a building, it was a sacred mountain, a portal to the spirit world, and the final resting place of a great king, Jasor Chan Kayawil, who was buried deep within its core with a treasure of jade, pearls, and intricately painted pottery. Facing it directly across the Great Plaza is its elegant counterpart, Temple Roman II, the Temple of the Masks, named for the massive stone masks of deities that flank its central staircase. Standing in this vast plaza, flanked by these twin titans of stone, you are standing in the very epicenter of Maya cosmic power. The genius of Tikal's architects, however, is revealed not just in the height of its temples, but in their perfect, purposeful alignment. The entire city is a colossal astronomical instrument, meticulously calibrated to the cycles of the sun, moon, and planets. The placement of major structures was dictated by celestial events. From the summit of Temple Roman IV, the tallest structure in the city at 212 feet, priests could observe the exact point on the horizon where the sun would rise on the winter solstice, a key date in the agricultural and ceremonial calendar. The layout of twin temples facing each other across a plaza often creates precise sightlines for tracking the movement of Venus, a planet associated with war and feared by the Maya. Even the ball court where teams reenacted the mythological game of creation was oriented on an east-west axis, linking the outcome of the game to the eternal journey of the sun. This was a society that built its reality around a deep, scientific understanding of the cosmos, encoding that knowledge into the very bones of their city. Beyond the grand plazas and royal acropolises, Tikal was a sprawling, bustling urban center, one of the largest in the Maya world, with a population estimated at up to 100,000 people at its peak. It was a complex web of social classes, from the divine king, or Ajor, and his court of nobles and scribes, down to the artisans, farmers, and laborers who supported the entire enterprise. The city's reservoir system was a marvel of hydraulic engineering, capturing and storing precious rainwater in giant paved depressions called bojos to sustain the population through the dry season. The recent use of LiDAR technology, a laser mapping system that pierces the forest canopy, has revealed that the area around Tikal was far more developed than previously imagined, with extensive terraces for agriculture, a network of fortifications, and countless hidden houses and temples, proving this was not an isolated ceremonial center but a vast, managed, and densely populated landscape. Then, around the 9th century AD, the unthinkable happened. The steady rhythm of construction, the carving of monuments celebrating royal births and military victories, the bustling life in the plazas, it all began to slow, and then it stopped. Tikal, along with the other great cities of the Maya southern lowlands, was abandoned. The jungle, patient and persistent, began its long work of reclamation, swallowing the stone pyramids in a blanket of green. The reasons for this great collapse remain one of archaeology's most compelling whys. There was no single invasion, no single catastrophe. The evidence points to a perfect storm of crises, a series of severe, prolonged droughts that would have devastated maize-based agriculture and emptied the reservoirs, intense warfare between competing city-states, evidenced by defensive walls and mass burials, and potentially a crisis of faith among the populace as the king's rituals failed to bring rain and prosperity. It was likely a slow unraveling, a generation-by-generation retreat from a way of life that could no longer be sustained, until the final resident left and the howler monkeys reclaimed the silent, stone-filled forest. For centuries, Tikal slept, its existence known only to a few local guides and swallowed by legend. Its modern rediscovery is a story of persistence and wonder. While the Spanish conquistadors heard rumors of a lost city in the Patain, it wasn't until the mid-19th century that expeditions began to penetrate the region. The true scale of the city was revealed through the tireless work of archaeologists from the University of Pennsylvania in the 1950s and 60s, who painstakingly cleared miles of jungle and mapped over 3,000 structures. Their work, and that of generations of Guatemalan archaeologists since, has unearthed a treasure far greater than gold, knowledge. The intricate hieroglyphs carved on stone stelae at Tikal have been crucial in deciphering the Maya script, allowing us to read their history in their own words. We now know the names of its kings, the dates of their births, their accessions, and their wars. Tikal has given us the chronology, the dynastic history, and the political narrative of the classic Maya, transforming them from a mysterious, vanished people into a complex, vibrant civilization whose story we can finally begin to read, one carved glyph at a time. But our journey now takes a dramatic and deeply human turn, transporting us from the slow, mysterious collapse of the Maya to a single, catastrophic day that froze an entire city in a moment of unimaginable terror. We travel to the bustling bay of Naples in Italy, to the prosperous Roman town of Pompeii. Here, the story is not one of gradual abandonment or forgotten decline, but of a vibrant community snuffed out in less than 24 hours by the furious eruption of Mount Vesuvius in the year 79 AD. This was not a slow burial by sand or jungle, but an instantaneous entombment in volcanic ash and pumice, a tragedy that became one of history's most extraordinary preservation events, offering us a snapshot of Roman life so intimate and detailed it feels like walking through a photograph. The sheer normality of that late summer day is what makes the tragedy so poignant. Pompeii was a thriving port and resort town, home to an estimated 11,000 to 15,000 people. Its streets were filled with the sounds of blacksmiths hammering, merchants advertising their goods, and children playing. Bakeries were pulling fresh bread from ovens, laundry was hanging to dry, and in the grand public baths, citizens were relaxing and socializing. Then, around 1 in the afternoon, the mountain exploded. The initial phase of the eruption sent a towering column of superheated ash and pumice miles into the sky, darkening the sun. For hours, this material rained down on the city, a relentless, suffocating hail that forced people to take shelter in their homes, hoping it would pass. It was this layer of fine, lightweight pumice, sometimes accumulating to depths of over 8 feet, that collapsed roofs and trapped people inside, but also sealed everything beneath it in a sterile, airtight blanket. Walking the streets of Pompeii today is an experience unlike any other archaeological site in the world. The stone-paved roads are still deeply grooved by the wheels of countless carts, and you can even see the stepping stones that allowed pedestrians to cross without getting their feet wet from the flowing wastewater in the streets. The walls of the buildings are alive with color, covered in brilliantly preserved frescoes depicting mythological scenes, lush gardens, and portraits of the residents themselves. But perhaps the most human connection comes from the graffiti. This wasn't vandalism, it was the social media of its day. Scratched into the plaster are election notices urging support for a local candidate, declarations of love, boasts about gladiators, and even simple, humorous doodles. These casual markings give voice to the people, revealing their hopes, their politics, and their everyday humor, making the silence of the ruins feel suddenly and powerfully loud with their presence. The social structure of the town is laid bare in its architecture. The political and commercial heart was the Forum, a large public square surrounded by temples, government buildings, and markets. Here, business was conducted, laws were passed, and citizens gathered. For entertainment, one could go to the large amphitheater, which could seat nearly the entire population, and is the oldest surviving Roman amphitheater built of stone, predating even the Colosseum in Rome. But it is in the private homes where the true depth of Roman life is revealed. The house of the Vetii, owned by 2 wealthy freedman brothers, is a stunning example. Its entrance features a famous fresco of the fertility god Priapus, a symbol of prosperity and good luck. Inside, the rooms are arranged around a central atrium open to the sky, collecting rainwater in an impluvium pool below. The walls are covered in exquisite paintings, from delicate still lifes to elaborate mythological panels, showcasing the owner's wealth and cultural pretensions. The contrast between these luxurious villas and the simple, cramped apartments above many shops paints a complete picture of a highly stratified society, all frozen in the same moment. Yet, for all the beauty and vibrancy on display, it is the hauntingly personal evidence of the disaster's final victims that leaves the most lasting impression. As the first phase of the eruption subsided, some thought it was over and ventured out, only to be met by the second, deadlier phase, a series of pyroclastic surges, waves of superheated gas and ash rocketing down the mountain at hurricane speeds, incinerating everything in their path and asphyxiating those who survived the initial fallout. Over centuries, the soft ash that buried the victims hardened around their bodies. As the bodies themselves decomposed, they left perfect voids in the compacted ash. In the 1800s, an archaeologist had the brilliant idea of pouring plaster of Paris into these cavities. When the surrounding ash was carefully chipped away, the plaster casts revealed the exact forms of the people in their final moments of agony. We see a man crouching with his hands over his face, a mother sheltering her child, a dog contorted in a final, painful spasm, and even the poignant shape of a man sitting down, perhaps simply waiting for the end. These are not sculptures, they are death masks, capturing the most intimate human tragedy with a rawness that transcends the centuries. The value of Pompeii, therefore, extends far beyond its macabre fascination. It is an unparalleled historical laboratory. Because the eruption was so sudden, everything was left exactly as it was on that day. Archaeologists have found loaves of bread still in ovens, jars of fish sauce still in kitchens, and surgical instruments laid out in a doctor's home. This has provided an incredibly detailed understanding of Roman diet, medicine, commerce, and domestic technology that no history book could ever convey. We can study the intricate lead piping of their water system, the clever design of their kitchens, and the vibrant pigments of their paints, which remain shockingly bright because they were protected from light and air for nearly 2 millennia. Ultimately, Pompeii's legacy is a dual one. It is a stark and humbling reminder of nature's awesome, unpredictable power, a force that can erase a thriving city in a matter of hours. Vesuvius remains an active volcano, and the modern cities that crowd its slopes today live with that same potential threat. But it is also a profound lesson in resilience and the preservation of memory. The very event that destroyed Pompeii also saved it from the slow decay and recycling of building materials that befell most ancient cities. It was lost, but in being lost, it was kept perfectly intact for us to find. It forces us to confront our own fragility while simultaneously celebrating the incredible durability of human culture, art, and connection. Pompeii doesn't just show us how the Romans died, it shows us in breathtaking, intimate detail how they lived. From the hauntingly preserved streets of Pompeii, we now journey across the Atlantic to the sun-baked plains of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, where an entirely different kind of wonder commands the landscape. Rising with geometric perfection from the flat jungle floor is the majestic and mysterious pyramid known as El Castillo, the undisputed heart of the great city of Chichen Itza. This is not the legacy of a single people, but a breathtaking architectural dialogue between two mighty civilizations, the Maya, the original masters of this land with their profound astronomical wisdom, and the Toltecs, warrior artists from the Central Highlands who brought a new militaristic fervor. The city that emerged from their fusion is a powerful synthesis of science, sport, and spirit, a place where every stone seems to hold a coded message about the cosmos. The genius of El Castillo, which means the castle, reveals itself not just in its imposing presence but in its function as a colossal stone calendar. The pyramid is a physical manifestation of the Maya's exquisite understanding of time and the heavens. Each of its 4 sides has 91 steps. When you add them all together and include the top platform as the final step, you arrive at the number 365, 1 step for each day of the solar year. But the true magic occurs during the spring and autumn equinoxes, a phenomenon that draws thousands of witnesses every year. As the sun sets on these 2 days, the play of light and shadow on the northwest corner of the pyramid creates the illusion of a giant serpent slithering down the staircase. The triangular patterns of sunlight connect the top platform's carved serpent head to the base, forming the complete body of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent deity. This was no happy accident. It was a meticulously calculated feat of engineering and astronomy, a way of binding the earthly structure to the celestial cycles, making the divine visibly present for all to see. This deep connection between the earthly and the cosmic is felt even more powerfully in the city's Great Ball Court, the largest and most impressive ever discovered in the Americas. The scale is staggering. The playing field stretches over 500 feet long with towering vertical walls 30 feet high. The game played here, known as pits, was far more than a simple sport. It was a ritual reenactment of mythology, a deadly serious ceremony with profound spiritual stakes. Using only their hips, elbows, or knees, 2 teams would battle to propel a solid rubber ball through a stone ring set high on the court's side wall. The acoustics of the court are famously eerie. A whisper from one end can be clearly heard at the other, and a clap produces a distinctive, multi-echoed sound that some researchers believe mimics the call of the sacred Quetzal bird. The outcome of the game was believed to influence the cycles of the sun and rain, ensuring the continuation of the world itself. While popular legend often claims the captain of the winning team was sacrificed as the ultimate honor, most archaeologists now believe it was more likely the losing captain, or perhaps a prisoner of war, who faced this fate, his blood offering seen as necessary to nourish the gods and maintain the cosmic order. For the Maya, the most vital element for life was not the sun but water. In the porous limestone of the Yucatan, there are no above-ground rivers. Water is found in natural sinkholes called cenotes. The most famous of these at Chichen Itza is the immense and deep sacred cenote, a natural well that was the center of a very different kind of ritual. This was not a place for drinking water, but for communication with the rain god Chok. For centuries, the Maya made offerings to this dark, water-filled portal to the underworld. When archaeologists dredged its depths in the early 20th century, they found a treasure trove that confirmed the ancient tales: exquisite objects of gold, jade, carved incense, and pottery. But they also uncovered more Sama evidence: the bones of men, women, and children. This suggests that during times of extreme drought or crisis, the ultimate offering was made not of objects, but of human lives, a desperate plea to the gods for the life-giving rain that the land so desperately needed. The city's grandeur, however, was not destined to last forever. Like many great Mesoamerican centers, Chichen Itza experienced a decline and eventual abandonment around the middle of the 13th century. The exact reasons remain shrouded in the jungle's heat haze, but clues point to a complex unraveling. One compelling theory suggests internal rebellion or civil strife, a rejection of the ruling elite and their demanding religious practices, perhaps fueled by a prolonged drought that made their promises seem empty. Another possibility is that the city's very success sowed the seeds of its downfall. The population may have grown too large for the fragile ecosystem to support, leading to resource depletion and social unrest. There is no evidence of a single catastrophic invasion or event. Instead, it appears that over generations, the city's political and spiritual power waned. The focus of Maya life gradually shifted to newer coastal cities that offered better trade opportunities, and the great monuments of Chichen Itza were left to the elements, a silent testament to a once unshakable belief system that could not, in the end, command the reins forever. But now we travel from the sun-drenched ball courts of the Maya to the dark, silent earth of central China, where a completely different kind of army stands in eternal vigilance. This is not a ruin of toppled columns or a jungle-entangled temple. It is an underground empire of clay and ambition, a military force buried in secret for over 2,000 years. The Terracotta Army is one of the most staggering archaeological discoveries of all time, not for what it tells us about a fallen city, but for what it reveals about the mind of a single man who unified a nation and then sought to conquer death itself. This is the subterranean legion of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China, a man whose obsession with immortality led him to create a monument of unparalleled scale and artistry to guard him in the afterlife. Imagine the sheer shock of the farmers in 1974, digging a well near the city of Xi'an when their shovels struck not water, but the fired clay head of a soldier, his stoic expression staring back from the depths of the earth. What they had accidentally uncovered was merely the outer perimeter of a necropolis so vast and so elaborate that much of it remains unexplored to this day. As archaeologists carefully excavated the site, they revealed not a handful of statues, but entire legions of life-sized warriors, each one crafted with an astonishing level of individual detail. This was no assembly line of identical dolls. It is a complete military hierarchy frozen in time. There are infantrymen standing at attention, archers kneeling in firing position, charioteers holding the reins of long-vanished horses, and officers of various ranks, identifiable by their more elaborate armor and confident stances. Every single face is different. Some are young and eager, others old and weary. Some have narrow eyes and high cheekbones, others round faces and soft features, believed to represent the diverse ethnicities drawn into the real Qin army from across the newly unified empire. Their hairstyles, their mustaches, the knots on their armor, even the tread on their shoes are rendered with meticulous care, creating not just an army, but a snapshot of an entire human society cast in clay for eternity. The logistical achievement of creating this force is almost beyond comprehension. Current estimates suggest there are over 8,000 soldiers, 130 chariots with 520 horses, and 150 cavalry horses, and that's just in the pits discovered so far. The organization of the workshop that produced them must have been phenomenal. Artisans worked in assembly line teams, molding legs, torsos, arms, and heads separately before assembling them and adding the personalized details. The figures were then fired in massive, temperature-controlled kilns, a technically challenging feat for sculptures of this size before being painted in vibrant, lifelike colors. Sadly, most of this paint has flaked off or oxidized rapidly upon exposure to air, but the faint traces that remain hint at how breathtakingly realistic the army must have originally looked, a polychrome host gleaming in the torchlight. But these silent soldiers were not meant to fight alone. Further excavations revealed two sets of breathtaking bronze chariots, each comprised of over 3,000 parts. They are not solid sculptures, but fully functional, half-size replicas, complete with working windows, flexible axles, and intricate harnesses made from gold and silver. The detail is so precise that the umbrella in one chariot was designed to swivel and lock in place to shield its passenger from the sun. These were not mere burial goods. They were masterpieces of metallurgy and engineering, meant to provide the emperor with transportation worthy of a god in the next world. All of this, the entire terracotta host, is merely the guardian force for the main event, the emperor's tomb itself, a massive, man-made mound that looms over the landscape a short distance away. And this central tomb remains almost entirely unexcavated, sealed shut for 2 millennia, primarily out of respect for the dead, but also due to very real fears described by the ancient historian Sima Qian. He wrote that the tomb's interior is a miniature universe, with ceilings inlaid with pearls to represent the stars and rivers and oceans simulated with flowing mercury. Modern scientific tests have indeed found unusually high concentrations of mercury in the soil around the mound, lending startling credibility to this ancient tale. Furthermore, Sima Qian reported that the tomb was rigged with crossbow booby traps set to fire at any intruder, and that the craftsmen who built it were sealed inside to protect its secrets. The potential archaeological payoff of opening it is incalculable. It could contain everything from the emperor's library to unimaginable treasures, but the technical and ethical challenges of safely penetrating a mercury-filled, booby-trapped structure have so far kept it inviolate. Ultimately, the terracotta army is the ultimate testament to the terrifying power and profound paranoia of Qin Shi Huang. He was a man who conquered the known world, standardizing writing, currency, and laws, and connecting the warring states into a single entity called China. But he was also a man desperately afraid of death, sending expeditions to find elixirs of immortality and surrounding himself with alchemists. When he could not cheat death, he decided to dominate the afterlife instead, mobilizing the entire resources of his new empire not to build a pyramid to the sun, but to create an underground mirror of his power. The thousands of unique faces of his terracotta soldiers represent the countless real lives conscripted into his service, both in life and in death, to fulfill a single man's monumental ambition. It is a project of breathtaking artistry, chilling megalomania, and staggering organizational skill, a permanent monument to the idea that a ruler's power should be absolute, unchallenged, and eternal. While the terracotta army reveals the staggering ambition of a single emperor, our next journey takes us to a site that tells a profoundly different story about the origins of human civilization, one not of conquest but of collaboration. We travel now to a dry, desert valley in Peru where the Supe River meets the Pacific Ocean. Here, nestled between barren mountains, lie the remains of a city so ancient that it was already a millennium old when the pyramids of Giza were being built. This is the sacred city of Caral, the oldest known city in the Americas, a place that fundamentally rewrites our understanding of how complex societies are born. Its discovery didn't just push back the timeline of American civilization. It presented a radical, peaceful alternative to the long-held belief that cities only emerge from the crucible of war. To grasp the sheer antiquity of Caral is to engage in a breathtaking exercise of time travel. The city was a thriving metropolis by 2600 BCE, a contemporary of the great civilizations of Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt. While the Egyptians were mastering the first steps of pyramid building at Saqqara, the people of Caral were undertaking a similarly monumental task thousands of miles away. The site is dominated by 6 large pyramidal structures, the largest of which rises to a height of 60 feet and measures an impressive 450 by 500 feet at its base. These were not tombs for pharaohs but flat-topped platforms that supported temples, altars, and rooms for ceremonial activities. Surrounding these central monuments are sunken circular plazas, elaborate residential complexes for the elite, and simpler dwellings for the wider community, all arranged with a clear and deliberate sense of urban planning that speaks to a highly organized and stratified society. What makes Caral truly revolutionary, however, is what archaeologists did not find. After decades of meticulous excavation, there is a complete and utter absence of any evidence for warfare. There are no defensive walls, no fortifications, no stockpiles of weapons, and no mutilated bodies or mass graves indicating violent conflict. In a field of study where the rise of the state is so often linked to organized violence and the need for defense, Caral stands as a stunning exception. It appears to have flourished for nearly 1,000 years as a peaceful, theocratic society. Its power was based not on military might, but on religion, trade, and a collective economic system that bound the community together. This suggests a model of civilization where cooperation and shared belief, rather than coercion and fear, were the primary engines that drove social complexity and monumental construction. The intellectual achievements of the Caral society were as sophisticated as their social structure, and they left behind a fascinating and enigmatic record of their ingenuity. Scattered throughout the site, archaeologists discovered bundles of knotted strings known as quippers. For a long time, these were associated exclusively with the later Inca Empire, who used them as a complex system of record-keeping. Finding them at Caral pushed the origin of this technology back by more than 4,000 years. While we cannot yet read the Caral quippers as we can some Inca examples, their presence strongly suggests the society had developed a formal, logical system for recording numerical data, perhaps tracking agricultural yields, tribute, or astronomical cycles. This was a civilization managing information, using a binary language of knots and strings to administer their complex economy long before the invention of writing in the Americas. Their architectural genius also extended to a deep understanding of the world around them, both on Earth and in the heavens. The entire city is a testament to acoustic and astronomical engineering. The main amphitheater was designed with such perfect acoustics that a person speaking in a normal voice in the center can be heard clearly in the highest seats, a feature that would have been crucial for religious leaders addressing large gatherings. Furthermore, the placement of key structures aligns with the movements of the stars and planets. Certain mounds and platforms are oriented toward the solstice sunsets and the rising of important constellations, integrating their ceremonial life with the cosmic order. This celestial connection was a source of their spiritual authority, allowing the priestly class to predict seasonal changes and guide the agricultural cycle, reinforcing their role as essential intermediaries between the people and the gods. The economy that supported this peaceful, intellectual society was built on a foundation of sophisticated agriculture and far-reaching trade. Despite being located in a harsh, arid environment, the people of Caral mastered irrigation, channeling water from the Soup River to fields where they grew cotton, squash, beans, and guava. Their most important crop was cotton, which they used not for clothing, but as a crucial industrial commodity. They traded this cotton with coastal fishing communities in exchange for vast quantities of anchovies and sardines. This symbiotic relationship, farmers providing cotton for fishing nets and fishers providing protein-rich food, created a stable economic foundation without the need for raiding or conquest. Shells from the coast, feathers from the jungle, and minerals from the highlands found at Caral show it was a hub in a vast, peaceful exchange network that spanned diverse ecological zones. And then, after nearly a millennium of stability and growth, the city was abandoned around 2000 BCE. The departure was not sudden or violent. It appears to have been a gradual process, a slow fading away. The leading theory points to climate change. Geological evidence suggests the region was hit by a series of devastating earthquakes and a prolonged drought, possibly linked to a recurring El Niño-like weather pattern. These natural disasters could have disrupted the delicate water supply, caused massive landslides that choked the irrigation canals, and driven the once reliable anchovy schools away from the coast, collapsing the economic network that sustained the city. Faced with an environment they could no longer control or predict, the people likely made a collective decision to disperse into smaller, more mobile communities, leaving their sacred city to be buried by the desert sands. The silence of Caral's abandoned plazas offers a powerful and poignant message. For centuries, historians and archaeologists operated on a model that saw warfare as the inevitable catalyst for social complexity. The idea that it takes a threat to make people organize, to build walls, and to follow leaders. Caral shatters that assumption. It proves that urban life, monumentality, and social stratification can emerge from a shared project of cooperation, from a collective desire to build a society in harmony with the cosmos and its neighbors. Its rediscovery forces us to expand our definition of civilization itself, reminding us that some of humanity's greatest and most enduring achievements were not forged in fire, but built through collaboration, faith, and a shared vision of a better world. After the coastal trade networks of Caral faded into silence, our journey now takes us to the rugged highlands of northern Ethiopia, to a place where faith did not just build upon the earth, but plunged directly into its heart. The town of Lalibela is home to something that seems to defy both physics and time. A complex of 11 monumental churches, each one not built from stone, but excavated from it, carved downward into the living rock of the mountainside. This is not architecture in the conventional sense. It is a form of reverse sculpture, a breathtaking act of devotion that transformed a solid volcanic plateau into a subterranean sanctuary. Created in the 12th and 13th centuries, these structures represent one of the most astonishing and singular architectural achievements in human history, a testament to a faith so powerful it could literally move mountains. The most iconic of these extraordinary creations is the Church of St. George, or Bet Georgis. To first lay eyes upon it is a moment of pure wonder. From the ground level, you see a perfect Greek cross nearly 40 feet tall, sunken into a deep, rectangular pit. It is as if a colossal stone crucifix was carefully lowered into the earth from the heavens above. To reach its entrance, you must descend a narrow, twisting trench that wraps around the structure, a journey that itself feels like a metaphorical descent into a sacred realm. The church is entirely monolithic, meaning it was carved from one continuous block of rock, attached at its base to the mountain below. Every detail, from the layered roof that mimics Aksumite architectural styles to the intricately carved windows and interior arches, was painstakingly chiseled from the top down. The precision is staggering, the vision almost incomprehensible. It stands in perfect, silent isolation, a masterpiece of form and faith that has remained virtually unchanged for over 800 years. The question of how this was accomplished with what we would consider rudimentary tools is a puzzle that continues to captivate engineers and historians. The primary tools were likely simple iron chisels, hammers, axes, and picks. The process began not with blueprints as we know them, but with a profound conceptual understanding of the desired form within the rock. Artisans would first carve a deep and wide trench around the entire outline of the future church, isolating a single, massive block of stone still connected to the bedrock below. Then, working from the top downward, they would begin the painstaking, dangerous process of hollowing out the interior, creating the nave, the aisles, the altars, and all the decorative elements, all while sculpting the exterior walls. This subtractive method meant there was zero margin for error. A significant mistake could not be patched or hidden, as a misplaced strike could ruin the entire project. The waste rock, tons and tons of it, had to be hauled up and out of the ever-deepening pits. The project represents an almost unimaginable investment of human labor, coordination, and unwavering belief. But the wonder of Lalibela extends far beyond the famous Bet Georgis. The site is divided into two main groups of churches, connected by a labyrinthine network of tunnels and passageways, turning the entire complex into a sprawling, underground spiritual landscape. One symbolic pathway is known as the Gate of Heaven, while another, a long, pitch-dark tunnel, is called the Path to Hell, representing a pilgrim's journey through darkness toward redemption and light. The churches themselves are diverse in style and form. Some, like Bet Medhain Alam, the largest monolithic church in the world, resemble a classical Greek temple with rows of massive interior pillars all carved from the same rock. Others, like Bet Mariam, are adorned with beautiful, deeply carved frescoes and are believed to be among the oldest of the group. This isn't a collection of separate buildings. It is a single, interconnected sacred compound designed for processions, prayer, and pilgrimage, a new Jerusalem for those who could not make the arduous journey to the Holy Land. This connection to Jerusalem is central to the lore of Lalibela. The complex is traditionally believed to have been constructed during the reign of King Jeba Meskel Lalibela, a member of the Zagwe dynasty. According to legend, he was inspired by a vision from God and received angelic assistance, with heavenly craftsmen working by day and mortal ones continuing the work by night. The deeper historical context, however, points to a very earthly inspiration. In the late 12th century, the Muslim conquests had made the pilgrimage to Jerusalem increasingly difficult and dangerous for Ethiopian Christians. King Lalibela's magnificent project is thought to have been an attempt to create an alternative pilgrimage site, a symbolic New Jerusalem, right in the heart of Ethiopia. The river that runs through the site is named the River Jordan, and the overall topography and names of the churches were intended to mirror the holy city itself, allowing the faithful to complete their spiritual journey without leaving their homeland. What makes Lalibela truly unique among the world's great ruins is that it is not a relic of a dead past. It is a living, breathing center of worship. For centuries, it has remained one of the holiest sites in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, one of the oldest branches of Christianity in the world. To visit today is to witness a continuum of faith that stretches back to the church's creation. You will see white-robed priests praying in the dimly lit interiors, illuminated by the flickering light of beeswax candles. The scent of incense hangs heavy in the air. During major religious festivals like Timkat Epiphany, the town swells with thousands of pilgrims who gather to sing, pray, and celebrate, their ancient chants echoing off the very rock walls that were carved for that purpose. This uninterrupted use has been both a blessing and a challenge for preservation, as the elements and the wear of countless feet continue to test the resilience of the soft rock. This enduring spiritual life, set against a backdrop of such profound isolation, has been key to the site's preservation. Tucked away in the Ethiopian highlands, Lalibela was largely unknown to the wider world for centuries, protecting it from the looting and repurposing that befell so many other ancient sites. Its protection has always been a community effort, a sacred duty passed down through generations of priests and locals. Today, this responsibility is shared with international organizations. A major ongoing preservation effort involves the construction of large, unsightly protective covers over several of the churches. While they detract from the aesthetic and spiritual atmosphere, these structures are a necessary compromise, shielding the soft volcanic tuff from the erosive power of torrential seasonal rains. ensuring that these miracles of faith and engineering can continue to inspire awe and devotion for another 800 years. Leaving the rock-hewn sanctuaries of Ethiopia behind, we now set sail across the Mediterranean to the sun-drenched island of Crete, where the very foundations of European civilization were laid. Here, nestled in a valley just south of the modern capital of Heraklion, lie the sprawling ruins of the Palace of Knossos. This was the epicenter of the magnificent Minoan culture, a civilization so advanced and so singular that it feels almost otherworldly. To walk through Knossos is to step into a world of labyrinthine corridors, vibrant art, and ingenious comforts, a place where myth and history are so deeply intertwined that it becomes impossible to separate one from the other. This was not just a royal residence, it was the administrative, religious, and economic heart of a vast maritime empire, and its discovery pulled back the curtain on Europe's very first advanced culture. The most enduring legacy of Knossos is not written in stone, but in story, the powerful Greek myth of the Minotaur and the Labyrinth. According to legend, King Minos of Crete commissioned the brilliant inventor Daedalus to build an inescapable maze beneath his palace to contain the Minotaur, a monstrous half-man, half-bull creature born from the queen's unnatural union with a sacred bull. Every 9 years, Athens was forced to send a tribute of 7 young men and 7 young women to be lost within the labyrinth and devoured by the beast, until the hero Theseus finally slew the monster with the help of Minos' daughter, Ariadne, who provided him with a ball of thread to retrace his steps. For centuries, this was considered a purely fictional tale, a dark allegory. The discovery of the vast, complex palace at Knossos, with its countless rooms, corridors, and sudden changes in level, made the legend feel startlingly real. The Minoans themselves revered the bull, as seen in their art depicting the dangerous acrobatic sport of bull leaping. The very name Minotaur means Bull of Minos, and the title Minos was likely not a single king but a dynastic name for all Minoan rulers, much like Pharaoh in Egypt. The ruins of Knossos provide a powerful, physical anchor for this myth, suggesting that these stories, passed down for 1,000 years, contain a kernel of truth about the power, the mystery, and the ritual practices of this lost civilization. Stepping into the palace itself, you are immediately struck by its sheer complexity. This was not a single, monolithic structure but a vast, multi-story complex that grew organically over centuries around a central courtyard. The layout is a bewildering maze of over 1,300 rooms including workshops, shrines, storerooms, and living quarters connected by long, twisting corridors, grand staircases, and narrow passageways that seem to deliberately confuse and disorient. This labyrinthine design was likely not for defense, but rather a sophisticated way to manage ventilation, create privacy, and separate different ceremonial and industrial functions. The Minoans were master architects who understood how to design for their environment. Throughout the palace, you find ingenious light wells, open shafts that ran from the roof down through multiple stories, allowing sunlight and fresh air to penetrate deep into the interior of the complex, illuminating rooms that would otherwise be dark and stuffy. This clever use of natural light and air circulation created a comfortable and surprisingly modern living environment. The sophistication of Knossos extends to a level of comfort that feels almost shockingly contemporary, their advanced sanitation systems. The Minoans enjoyed a standard of plumbing and drainage that would not be matched again in Europe for over 3,000 years. The palace featured a sophisticated network of terracotta pipes that supplied fresh water from springs miles away. Inside the residential quarters, they had fully functional flush toilets. A wooden seat was positioned over a clay conduit, and water from a nearby tank could be released to carry waste away through a closed terracotta sewer system that ran beneath the palace floors and emptied outside the complex. They even had terracotta tubs set into the floor, likely for ritual bathing or cooling off, with drains to carry the water away. This concern for hygiene and hydraulic engineering reveals a society that valued comfort, health, and civic organization on a level that feels remarkably advanced. The soul of the Minoans, however, is best revealed not in their plumbing but in their art. The walls of Knossos were alive with color, covered in vibrant frescoes painted onto the wet plaster. Unlike the solemn, formal art of their contemporaries in Egypt and Mesopotamia, Minoan art is dynamic, naturalistic, and bursting with life. You see lithe, acrobatic figures gracefully leaping over the backs of charging bulls in scenes of incredible athleticism and danger. The famous Prince of the Lilies fresco depicts a confident, youthful figure wearing a gorgeous plumed headdress, leading a ceremonial procession. Most enchanting are the depictions of nature. Dolphins dance playfully through azure seas, octopuses wrap their tentacles around elegant jars, and monkeys play amidst lush, flowering landscapes. This art doesn't glorify conquering kings or bloody battles. It celebrates the joy of movement, the beauty of the natural world, and the elegance of courtly life. It suggests a society that was peaceful, prosperous, and deeply connected to its environment. One of the most evocative rooms in the entire complex is the so-called throne room. This small, sunken chamber feels intimate and powerful. Its centerpiece is a majestic, high-backed stone throne, believed to be the oldest throne in all of Europe, flanked by stone benches along the walls. The room is decorated with beautiful frescoes of Griffin's mythical creatures with the body of a lion and the head of an eagle reclining amidst papyrus flowers. This was likely not a seat of an absolute monarch in the later Greek style, but rather a sacred space where a priest or priest-king would sit during important religious rituals, perhaps to communicate with the gods. The atmosphere in the room is still palpable, a blend of spiritual authority and serene beauty. The sheer scale of the palace's economy is evident in its massive storage magazines. Row upon row of enormous floor-level pithoi jars line the walls of long, narrow rooms. These giant ceramic containers, some standing taller than a person, could hold vast quantities of olive oil, wine, grains, and dried fish, the wealth of the Minoan Empire. The palace was not just a home for elites, it was the central clearinghouse for the entire region's agricultural surplus, which was then traded across the Mediterranean or redistributed to the population. The intricate administration of this wealth is evidenced by the discovery of thousands of clay tablets inscribed with Linear A and Linear B script. While Linear A, the original Minoan script, remains undeciphered, the later Linear B tablets used by the Mycenaeans who later occupied the site reveal meticulous records of inventories, listing every jar of oil, every piece of textiles, and every chariot wheel, giving us a detailed, if dry, account of the complex economy that Knossos controlled. Our modern understanding of Knossos is deeply and controversially shaped by one man, the English archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans. When he began excavating the site in the year 1900, he was not content to simply uncover the ruins. He felt a powerful drive to reconstruct them, to bring the Minoan world back to life. Using concrete, he and his team rebuilt grand staircases, reconstructed entire walls, and recreated columns based on their depictions in frescoes, painting them in their original vibrant red and black. He even hired a Swiss artist to restore the damaged frescoes, often based on tiny fragments. While these reconstructions are visually stunning and help the average visitor instantly visualize the palace in its glory, they are fraught with problems. Modern archaeologists argue that Evans often let his own imagination and classical education fill in the gaps, creating a vision of Knossos that may be more early 20th century fantasy than Minoan reality. The concrete he used is now deteriorating and damaging the original ancient stonework beneath. Yet, for all their controversy, his efforts undeniably captured the world's imagination and made the Minoans feel vividly, tangibly real in a way that a field of low foundations never could. The ultimate fate of this magnificent civilization is as dramatic as the myths it inspired. Around the year 1600 BCE, the entire Aegean world was shaken by one of the most violent volcanic eruptions in human history, the explosion of the Thera volcano on the island of Santorini, just 70 miles north of Crete. The eruption was cataclysmic, sending tsunamis crashing against the northern coast of Crete and blanketing the eastern half of the island in a thick layer of suffocating ash that would have devastated agriculture for a generation. This ecological catastrophe likely shattered the economic and spiritual foundation of Minoan power, weakening Knossos irreparably. In this vulnerable state, they were easy prey for invasion. Within a century or two, the palace shows evidence of a takeover by the Mycenaeans from mainland Greece, who spoke an early form of Greek and used the Linear B script to administer their new possession. The unique, vibrant, and peaceful culture of the Minoans faded away, absorbed by the more warlike Mycenaeans. The labyrinth fell silent, its secrets buried for over 3 millennia, leaving behind only fragments of beautiful art and whispers of a sophisticated society that valued grace, innovation, and the beauty of the natural world above all else. From the sophisticated plumbing and vibrant art of the Minoans, we now voyage to one of the most remote inhabited places on Earth, a tiny volcanic speck in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. Here, separated from the nearest continent by over 2,000 miles of open sea, a culture developed in complete isolation and achieved something that continues to baffle and inspire in equal measure. This is Rapa Nui, better known as Easter Island, and its landscape is dominated by nearly 900 massive stone figures, the moai, silent, stern-faced giants that stand as eternal guardians of a story of breathtaking ingenuity and profound tragedy. These are not merely statues, they are the concentrated ambition of a people who turned their entire island into a sacred landscape of ancestor worship, and whose legacy serves as a stark, universal parable about the delicate balance between human ambition and environmental limits. The first thing that strikes any visitor is the sheer scale and presence of these figures. Carved from compressed volcanic ash known as tuff, the moai are not generic idols. Each one is a unique representation of a deified ancestor, believed to hold spiritual power or mana, capable of watching over and protecting their living descendants. The average moai stands about 13 feet tall and weighs an astonishing 14 tons, but the scale of ambition didn't stop there. The largest moai ever erected, named Paro, stood over 32 feet tall and weighed a staggering 82 tons. And then there is the one that was never finished, still lying attached to the bedrock in the Rono Raraku quarry. This colossal figure, nicknamed El Gigante, is 69 feet long and would have weighed an estimated 270 tons, equivalent to about 40 adult African elephants. The ambition to even conceive of carving and moving such a behemoth speaks to a society that was driven by a powerful, all-consuming spiritual imperative. The question of how they were moved from the quarry to their final ceremonial platforms, called ahu, which can be miles away across rugged terrain, has been one of archaeology's most captivating puzzles. The traditional theory, popularized for decades, involved a great deal of log rolling. This hypothesis suggested that the Rapa Nui felled trees to create a track of wooden rollers, and then hundreds of people used ropes to painstakingly pull the statue along this path, constantly moving logs from the back to the front. It's a logical idea, but it hinges on one critical resource: a plentiful supply of large, straight trees. For a long time, this theory seemed to support the overarching narrative of the island's collapse, that the people recklessly deforested their island to move statues, ultimately causing their own downfall. However, more recent experimental archaeology has proposed a far more dynamic and astonishing method: that the Moai were literally walked to their homes. This theory, supported by local oral traditions that actually stated the statues walked, involves a much smaller team of people. Using 3 sturdy ropes, one team on each side would rock the statue from side to side, while a third team at the back would carefully control its forward momentum and prevent it from tipping over. In a dramatic test of this theory, researchers successfully walked a concrete replica of a Moai along a path. This method would have been incredibly efficient, requiring far fewer people, and crucially, far less wood. Only a few logs might be needed as pivots to navigate tricky turns. This revolutionary idea doesn't just change how we think about the transportation. It begins to reshape the entire story of the Rapa Nui, suggesting they were not reckless ecocidal maniacs, but ingenious engineers who found an incredibly clever way to achieve their goals with minimal resources. But the journey of the Moai didn't end when they reached their ahu. The statues we see today, with their hollow eye sockets staring blankly inland, are incomplete. The final and most sacred act of the ceremony was to place eyes into those sockets. These eyes were not simple stones. They were intricate creations made of white coral with a pupil of gleaming red scoria stone. To set the eyes in place was to activate the Moai, to bring the ancestor to life and allow its mana to flow out and watch over the village. Many of these platforms also supported a pukau, a large, cylindrical topknot of red scoria that weighed up to 12 tons and was balanced precariously on the head of the Moai, likely representing a hairstyle common among male elites. The engineering feat of lifting this massive stone cylinder onto the head of an already erect statue is a puzzle in itself, often explained by building a long, gradual ramp of stones and then dragging the pukau into position. This incredible cultural flowering, however, was shadowed by a devastating ecological collapse. When Polynesian settlers first arrived on the island around 1200 AD, they found a pristine paradise covered in a dense forest of giant palm trees. But as the population grew, perhaps to as many as 15,000 people, the pressure on the environment intensified. Trees were cut down for canoe building, for firewood, for housing, and yes, likely for some statue transportation. The rats that arrived with the settlers compounded the problem, eating the seeds of the palms and preventing the forests from regenerating. Without trees, the soil eroded away, crippling agriculture. Without large trees for canoes, deep-sea fishing became impossible, restricting the diet to shallow water shellfish. The society descended into a brutal crisis of resource scarcity. The most poignant evidence of this collapse is not the fallen Moai, but the sudden and violent shift in the archaeological record. As resources vanished and clans began to war over what little remained, the culture of ancestor worship and statue construction collapsed. The building of ahu stopped. Instead of carving new Moai, the people began to topple the existing ones. Using ropes and levers, rival clans would ritually overthrow each other's ancestral statues, breaking their necks on the rocks below, seeking to sever the spiritual connection and mana of their enemies. The coral eyes were pried out and smashed. The island became a landscape of fallen giants, their broken forms a silent testament to a social and ecological catastrophe. The culture that emerged from this chaos was a survivor, but a dramatically different one, centered around a new birdman cult that worshipped the deity Makemake and held competitions for leadership rather than relying on ancestral lineage. The story of Easter Island has long been held up as a cautionary tale, a microcosm of what can happen when a society fails to live sustainably within its means. While the newer walking theory complicates the simple narrative of pure ecocide, the core lesson remains powerful. The Rapa Nui did not necessarily see the disaster coming. They likely adapted their methods to use fewer resources as trees became scarcer, unaware of the irreversible tipping point they were approaching. Their isolation meant there was no escape, no trade for resources, no help from the outside. They were alone on their island, just as we are alone on our planet. The Moai, therefore, stand for more than just a lost culture's artistic achievement. They are a permanent monument to human creativity and spiritual yearning, but they are also a sobering reminder that no society, no matter how ingenious or devout, is immune to the consequences of exceeding its environmental limits. They are a warning carved in stone, gazing not at us but past us into a future we are still shaping. Rising from the heart of the ancient city like a man-made mountain, the Citadel of Aleppo is not merely a castle. It is a sprawling, 50-acre acropolis of human history, a geological record of conquest, culture, and commerce written in stone. Its very form is a declaration of power, a colossal mound of earth and ruins that has been sculpted and fortified by nearly every major civilization to sweep across the Fertile Crescent. To stand before its immense, sloped walls is to feel the cumulative weight of 5,000 years of continuous habitation, a timeline so deep it makes most of the world's famous castles seem like recent constructions. This fortress was never just a military stronghold. It was the symbolic heart of one of the world's oldest continuously inhabited cities, a nexus on the Silk Road where the wealth of the East met the ambition of the West, and everyone who passed through sought to leave their mark. The citadel's overwhelming presence begins with its formidable approach. To even think of entering, you must first cross a towering stone bridge spanning a deep, dry moat that was once filled with water. This bridge leads to a single, heavily fortified gatehouse, a deliberate design to funnel and control all access. The entrance itself is a masterpiece of defensive engineering, a chilling gauntlet designed to shatter the morale of any attacker. You don't simply walk through a door, you navigate a series of right-angle turns, forcing any potential invader to expose their unshielded side to defenders above. This narrow passage is punctuated by massive, ironclad doors, murder holes in the ceiling for pouring boiling liquid or dropping stones, and slots for portcullises that could slam down at a moment's notice. Every step was a calculated risk, a psychological game played in stone and shadow, ensuring that even if the outer walls were breached, the inner sanctum remained a near impossible conquest. Once inside the gates, the citadel reveals itself as a complete, walled city. At its center stands the crown jewel of Ayyubid architecture, the magnificent throne room. Commissioned by the great Sultan al-Zahir Ghazi in the early 13th century, this is not a dark, damp medieval hall, but a space of surprising elegance and light. Its grand Iwan, a vaulted hall open on one side, overlooks the city and is adorned with intricately carved stone Arabic calligraphy and geometric patterns. The acoustics here are perfect, designed so that the Sultan's whispers could be heard by his closest advisors, while his proclamations would echo with authority. This room was the command center of an empire where trade deals spanning continents were brokered and military campaigns were planned, but the citadel's secrets run even deeper, literally. A labyrinth of underground passages, granaries, and cisterns snakes beneath the surface. These tunnels allowed the garrison to move troops and supplies unseen, to access secret water sources during a siege, and to potentially stage surprise counterattacks. They were the hidden, beating heart that allowed the fortress to withstand long sieges, a subterranean world of survival built to outlast any above-ground assault. This strategic perfection made the citadel a prize coveted by history's most famous conquerors. Its story is a roll call of empires. The Hittites first fortified the natural hill. Alexander the Great garrisoned his troops here during his campaigns. The Romans built temples to Zeus and other gods on its summit, their foundations later reused by others. The Umayyads and Abbasids expanded it, but it was the Seljuks and most notably the Ayyubids, Saladin's dynasty, who gave it its current, iconic form, constructing the massive stone walls and sloped glacis that define its silhouette today. It withstood the onslaught of the Crusaders, only to later fall to the world-shattering force of the Mongols under Hulagu Khan in 1260, who so devastated the city that the citadel lay abandoned for decades. It was then rebuilt by the Mamluks and later incorporated into the Ottoman Empire, serving as a garrison for Ottoman troops for 4 centuries. Each layer of stone is a page in a history book, each alteration a change in regime, each repair a story of resilience. This long narrative of endurance, however, faced its most severe test in our own time. During the devastating Syrian civil war, the ancient city of Aleppo became a brutal battleground, and the citadel found itself on the front lines once more. Its strategic height made it a key position, and it suffered significant damage. Shelling pockmarked its ancient walls, and explosives were detonated in areas around its base. The monumental iron entrance gate was blown apart, and the area around the citadel was reduced to rubble. For the first time in centuries, the continuity of this living monument was threatened not by a foreign empire, but by internal conflict, a stark reminder that the greatest dangers to our shared heritage often come from within. Yet, even amidst the devastation, the story of the Citadel of Aleppo is shifting from one of loss to one of hope and determined renewal. With the conflict subsided in the area, an international effort involving Syrian archaeologists and global experts from organizations like UNESCO has begun the painstaking work of assessment and restoration. This is not about erasing the scars of war, but about stabilizing the structure, preventing further collapse, and carefully, respectfully, rebuilding what was lost using traditional methods and materials. The goal is to preserve its authenticity, to ensure that future generations can still read the 5,000-year story inscribed in its stones. The citadel has survived earthquakes, sieges, and the rise and fall of a dozen empires. Its latest chapter is a testament to the human spirit's unwavering commitment to preserving our collective memory, proving that while conflict can damage stone, it cannot so easily extinguish our reverence for the enduring symbols of our shared past. But our journey now takes a dramatic turn from the sun-scorched stones of Aleppo to the shifting, shimmering waters of the Arabian Sea, off the western coast of India. Here we dive into a story that lives at the fascinating intersection of devout faith and hard science, where ancient scripture meets modern sonar technology. This is the search for the legendary city of Dwarka, the celestial kingdom of the Hindu god Lord Krishna, said to have been a city of unparalleled splendor that was swallowed by the ocean in a single day upon his death. For centuries, this was considered a beautiful allegory, a poetic metaphor from the sacred texts. But what if the myth was actually a memory? What if the waves now hiding this lost city are not just the stuff of legend, but the keepers of a profound historical truth? The story of Dwarka's demise is etched into the heart of Hindu tradition, primarily found in the epic Mahabharata and the Puranas. According to these texts, Krishna established his magnificent capital on the mainland, building a city of gold, emeralds, and other precious stones with majestic gates, wide boulevards, and a grand palace. It was a beacon of prosperity and righteousness. The legend states that after Krishna left his mortal body, the era of his divine presence ended, and the sea rose up to consume his city, pulling all its grandeur beneath the waves in a single catastrophic event. For generations, this was understood as a spiritual tale about the impermanence of the material world. Yet the descriptions were so precise, so vivid in their urban detail, that they sparked a tantalizing question: could a real, physical city have inspired this epic narrative? This question drove a group of determined Indian marine archaeologists to the coastal town of modern Dwarka in Gujarat, beginning a systematic underwater investigation that would startle the academic world. Their primary tool for the initial survey was side-scan sonar, a technology that essentially creates an acoustic picture of the seafloor. Towed behind a research vessel, the sonar emits sound pulses that bounce off the seabed and any objects on it. The returning echoes are then translated into detailed images, revealing patterns and shapes that are unmistakably unnatural. What the sonar revealed offshore was nothing short of electrifying, a series of clear, geometric formations that looked nothing like the random contours of a natural seabed. The sonar maps showed the outlines of what appeared to be massive walls, foundations, and even a potential harbor structure, all lying beneath meters of water and centuries of silt. With these sonar targets identified, the next phase involved sending divers down to physically verify the findings. Braving strong currents and often limited visibility, these underwater explorers began to bring up tangible proof. Their hands, reaching out of the murky water, held artifacts that had not been touched for millennia. They recovered stone blocks that were clearly dressed and shaped by human tools. They found anchors, their holes meticulously carved, that would have once secured large seafaring vessels. Most significantly, they brought up pottery shards, some of which could be dated using thermoluminescence dating, a method that measures the last time the pottery was fired. The results were staggering, pointing to a settlement that thrived around 3,500 to 3,000 years ago, a time frame that aligns remarkably well with the traditional dating of the Mahabharata era. The most compelling evidence, however, lay on the seabed itself. The divers documented and mapped extensive stone foundations, the remains of fortification walls, and structures that suggested a well-planned urban settlement. The layout of these underwater ruins, with its clear geometric patterns and evidence of a grand gateway, echoes the descriptions of ancient Dwarka found in the texts. The discovery of a potential pier or dockyard structure further supports the idea that this was not just a settlement, but a major port city, one that was engaged in significant maritime activity. The sheer scale of the construction, using large interlocking stone blocks, points to a sophisticated and powerful society capable of organizing large-scale architectural projects. This evidence paints a picture of a highly advanced port culture that was a major hub in an extensive trade network. The location of ancient Dwarka would have placed it perfectly to control trade routes across the Arabian Sea, linking the Indian subcontinent to the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, and the early civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt. The artifacts and structural remains suggest a people who were master seafarers, engineers, and urban planners. Their city was designed to flourish from commerce, its wealth built on the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures with distant lands, making it a cosmopolitan center long before the term was ever coined. The ongoing exploration of Dwarka forces us to engage in a profound and exciting reevaluation of the relationship between mythology and history. For a long time, Western academia often dismissed ancient texts like the Mahabharata as purely religious or literary works containing little factual basis. The discoveries off the coast of Gujarat challenge that assumption head-on. They suggest that these enduring stories, passed down through countless generations, may be rooted in real historical events, cataclysmic occurrences so impactful that they became woven into the very fabric of a culture's identity. A massive flood, a sudden change in coastline due to tectonic activity, or a gradual rise in sea levels at the end of the last ice age could have been the actual event that inspired the legend of the ocean reclaiming Krishna's city. The search for Dwarka, therefore, is about more than just finding old stones underwater. It is about bridging a divide, about showing that faith and science are not always adversaries, but can sometimes be partners in the quest to uncover our deepest past. It invites us to listen to the old stories with new ears, to hear in them not just the whispers of gods, but the distant echoes of a forgotten human achievement, now sleeping beneath the sea. From the sunken legends of Dwarka, we ascend to a sun-baked plateau in the foothills of the Zagros Mountains, to a city that was designed not for defense or daily life, but for pure, breathtaking spectacle. This is Persepolis, the ceremonial heart of the colossal Achaemenid Persian Empire, a place where stone was carved not just into walls, but into a permanent declaration of power, harmony, and global ambition. Unlike other capitals bustling with merchants and residents, Persepolis served a singular, magnificent purpose. It was the stage for the world's first superpower to receive its subjects in an annual pageant of loyalty and tribute, a ritual frozen forever in its exquisite stone reliefs. To walk through its ruins is to understand how an empire that stretched from the Nile to the Indus River chose to represent its unparalleled dominion. Your approach to this royal complex would have been one of deliberate awe. You would not simply amble in, you were guided along a processional pathway, building anticipation for the grandeur ahead. The formal entrance was through the monumental Gate of All Nations, a colossal structure flanked by two enormous carved bull men, hybrid creatures with the heads of bearded men and the powerful bodies and wings of bulls. These Lamashu figures were not just decorative, they were apotropaic guardians designed to ward off evil spirits and impress upon every visitor the supernatural power protecting this sacred space. Passing between them, you would enter a grand square hall where inscriptions in three ancient languages, Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, welcomed dignitaries and proclaimed the glory of the king. This multilingual greeting was your first clue that Persepolis was built for a global audience, a place where the empire's incredible diversity was not just acknowledged, but celebrated as a core part of its identity. Once through the gate, your eyes would be drawn to the centerpiece of the entire complex, the Apadana, or the Grand Audience Hall. This was where the empire's power was put on dazzling display. To reach it, you had to climb the most famous feature of Persepolis, the magnificent double-sided ceremonial staircase. This is not merely a set of steps, it is a sprawling stone canvas, covered in one of the most detailed and eloquent artistic narratives from the ancient world. The reliefs depict a timeless procession. Row upon row of figures representing the 23 subject nations of the empire are shown bringing their annual tribute to the king, who would have been seated in majesty within the hall above. The beauty of these carvings lies in their specific, respectful detail. You can see the Medes bringing vessels and bracelets, the Elamites leading a lioness and her cubs, the Armenians presenting precious wines, the Ethiopians offering elephant tusks and a giraffe, and the Lydians carrying intricate golden vessels. Each delegation is led by a Persian or Median usher, their hands held in a gesture of respect, not force. This is not a depiction of conquered peoples groveling in subjugation. It is a portrait of a vast, organized, and multicultural empire offering its gifts willingly to a central authority that ensured peace and prosperity for all. It was a powerful piece of political propaganda carved in stone for eternity, proclaiming that Persian rule brought order and unity to a fractious world. The Apadana itself was an architectural marvel designed to reinforce this message. Its roof was supported by 72 towering stone columns, each 60 feet high, topped with elaborate capitals carved in the shape of twin bulls, griffins, or lions. These columns were spaced so widely that the interior space was largely free of obstructions, creating a vast, open hall capable of holding thousands of guests for grand receptions. Imagine the scene during the Nowruz, the Persian New Year festival, when delegates from every corner of the empire would gather here. The hall would have been a riot of color and sound, filled with the scents of exotic perfumes and the textures of fine silks and wools, all beneath a cedarwood roof imported from Lebanon. The sheer scale of the space, combined with the overwhelming visual evidence of global participation, would have left no visitor in doubt of the king's absolute and divinely sanctioned authority. Beyond the Apadana lay another colossal hall, the Throne Hall or the Hall of 100 Columns. Built by Darius's son and successor, Xerxes, this was an even larger structure, used for more intimate royal audiences and perhaps to receive military elites. While its stone columns have long since toppled, their massive bases still mark the floor plan, allowing you to grasp the immense, warehouse-like scale of the interior. The entrance to this hall was guarded by another set of monumental stone gates, this time adorned with colossal carved figures of the king engaged in combat with mythical beasts. These images served a clear symbolic purpose. They depicted the monarch as the heroic defender of order against the forces of chaos, a recurring theme that legitimized his rule as essential for the stability of the entire civilized world. The genius of Persepolis was not just in its artistic program, but in its administrative brilliance. The city functioned as the central bank and record-keeping hub for the empire's vast economy. Numerous buildings within the complex, particularly the treasury, contained endless rows of storage rooms where the tribute depicted on the stairways was actually stored, precious metals, textiles, weapons, and exotic goods from every satrapy. Thousands of clay tablets were discovered here, written in Elamite, detailing the payments in silver and rations in wine and grain made to the thousands of skilled workers, artisans, artists, and laborers who built and maintained the city. These mundane records reveal a highly organized, bureaucratic state that could manage a massive, paid workforce, a testament to an administrative sophistication that matched its artistic splendor. This glorious symbol of imperial power met a sudden and catastrophic end. In the year 330 BCE, the meteoric rise of Alexander the Great brought his Macedonian army to the gates of Persepolis. According to the ancient historians, the city was surrendered without a fight. Its treasures fell into his hands, and after a prolonged stay, a fire broke out that raged through the wooden ceilings and beams of the palaces, causing the stone walls and sculptures to crack and collapse from the intense heat. The classical sources, written centuries later, portray this as a deliberate act of revenge by a drunken Alexander, urged on by an Athenian courtesan to retaliate for the Persian burning of the Acropolis during the Persian Wars a century and a half earlier. Whether it was a calculated political act to symbolically end the Achaemenid dynasty or a reckless accident, the result was the same. The ceremonial heart of the Persian Empire was reduced to smoldering ruins, its charred remains left as a stark monument to the transience of earthly power, even for the greatest empire the world had yet seen. Leaving the grand, fire-scorched plazas of Persepolis behind, we now travel to a completely different world of architecture, one defined not by imperial ambition but by communal ingenuity and a profound harmony with a harsh and stunning landscape. Our journey brings us to the high desert plateaus of what is now southwestern Colorado, where the ancestral Puebloan people performed a breathtaking feat of environmental adaptation. Instead of carving into rock like the citizens of Lalibela or building upward like the Inca, they chose to build within the earth itself, constructing entire villages tucked securely beneath the vast, overhanging sandstone cliffs of Mesa Verde. This was not a retreat from the world, but a brilliant strategic choice, a way to create sustainable, defensible, and spiritually connected homes in a demanding environment, leaving behind a legacy that feels both ancient and astonishingly modern in its thoughtful design. The scale of their achievement is best understood by standing before Cliff Palace, the largest and most famous cliff dwelling in North America. The first sight of it is nothing short of mesmerizing. Imagine gazing across a deep canyon and seeing not a blank rock face, but an intricate stone city seemingly glued to the cliff wall, 100 feet below the rim and 100 feet above the canyon floor. It appears like a delicate sandcastle crafted by a giant, a complex of over 150 individual rooms and 75 kivas, built into a giant natural alcove that protects it from the elements. These were not dark, cramped caves. They were vibrant, multi-story apartment complexes with towers that rose 4 stories high, their masonry walls made of precisely shaped sandstone blocks mortared with a mixture of mud, water, and ash. The ancestral Puebloans were master builders, and their technique evolved over centuries. Their earliest structures were pit houses on the mesa tops, but as their skills advanced, they began constructing these elaborate cliff dwellings, using the natural alcoves as ready-made roofs and structural support, a perfect marriage of natural geology and human craftsmanship. The most sacred and architecturally distinct spaces within these complexes were the kivas. These are circular, subterranean rooms that served as the spiritual and social heart of the community. To enter a kiva, you would descend a ladder through a hole in the roof, leaving the everyday world behind and stepping into a ceremonial space. The design of a kiva is rich with symbolic meaning. In the center of the floor is a small, shallow fire pit, representing the place of emergence from the underworld according to Puebloan cosmology. Between the fire pit and the wall sits a low masonry bench, and a deflector wall shields the fire from the airflow of the ventilation shaft. A key feature is the sipapu, a small, symbolic hole in the floor that represents the portal through which the first people entered this world, and through which they could communicate with the spirit world. These were not just rooms, they were meticulously engineered environments for prayer, storytelling, and community gatherings, spaces where the social and spiritual fabric of the people was woven tightly together, generation after generation. But life was not confined to the shaded alcoves below. The vast, flat mesas high above the canyon rims were the true economic engine of this society. Here, the ancestral Puebloans were skilled dry land farmers, cultivating crops in an environment that received less than 12 inches of rain per year. They developed a sophisticated understanding of the land, creating grids of check dams and reservoirs to capture and conserve every precious drop of rainwater and snowmelt. Their primary crops were the Three Sisters: corn, beans, and squash. They developed drought-resistant strains of corn that could thrive in the poor soil, and they planted them in a symbiotic relationship. The corn stalks provided a structure for the bean vines to climb. The beans fixed nitrogen in the soil to nourish the corn, and the broad leaves of the squash plants shaded the ground, retaining moisture and suppressing weeds. This agricultural wisdom allowed them to support a population of several thousand people at Mesa Verde's peak. proving that a seemingly inhospitable landscape could be coaxed into abundance with knowledge and care. The artifacts they left behind open an intimate window into a rich and complex cultural life. When these dwellings were abandoned, many personal items were left in place, preserved by the dry desert air and the protection of the alcoves. Archaeologists have found beautifully crafted black-on-white pottery, decorated with intricate geometric and spiritual designs. They have discovered finely woven sandals, turkey feather blankets, and elegant baskets so tightly woven they could still hold water. Most poignant are the rock art panels where artists pecked and painted images onto the canyon walls. These pictographs and petroglyphs depict animals like bighorn sheep and deer, abstract symbols and human-like figures, possibly representing Chichena's spirit messengers in Puebloan belief. These were not a people merely surviving, they were creating art, expressing their worldview, and living a life rich with ritual and meaning. Then, around the end of the 13th century, something profound happened. Over a period of just a few decades, the entire population of Mesa Verde left their magnificent cliffside homes. This was not a sudden, panicked flight. Evidence suggests it was a deliberate, organized exodus. They took their most precious possessions with them, but they left behind a treasure trove of everyday items, silently waiting for their owner's return. The reasons for this great migration are still pieced together from environmental and archaeological clues. A devastating 23-year-long megadrought confirmed by tree ring data would have crippled their agricultural system, drying up springs and making farming on the mesas nearly impossible. This environmental stress was likely compounded by social factors. As resources dwindled, tension and conflict between groups may have increased. Furthermore, the very success of their society may have led to overpopulation, putting unsustainable pressure on the local ecosystem. It was likely a confluence of these pressures, a perfect storm of ecological and social challenges, that led the community to make the difficult decision to leave their homeland in search of a more reliable source of water and a new beginning. Their departure was not an end but a migration. The people of Mesa Verde did not vanish. They moved south, primarily into what is now Arizona and New Mexico, where they joined existing Pueblo communities. Their architectural knowledge, their pottery styles, and their spiritual traditions traveled with them, influencing the cultures of the Hopi, the Zuni, and the Rio Grande Pueblos. The great houses at Choco Canyon, another ancestral Puebloan center, had already established a wide-ranging cultural network, and the migrants from Mesa Verde likely integrated into these existing connections. Today, their descendants still live in the Southwest, maintaining cultural traditions that stretch back centuries. The legacy of Mesa Verde is therefore not one of a mysterious, vanished people, but of a resilient culture that adapted to changing circumstances. Their story is a powerful lesson in sustainability, a reminder of the deep, intrinsic connection between a people and their environment, and a testament to the enduring human spirit that chooses to move forward in the face of immense challenge, carrying its home not in stones but in memory and tradition. From the cloud-swept heights of Machu Picchu to the underwater mysteries of Dwarka, this journey across continents and millennia reveals a truth far more profound than just stone and mortar. These 20 sites are not merely ruins, they are the enduring fingerprints of humanity's most audacious dreams. Each one, in its own unique language of architecture, tells a universal story of a people who looked at their world, whether a desert, a jungle, a mountain, or a coastline, and dared to imagine something magnificent upon it. They are monuments to our shared drive to create, to reach for the divine, to organize our societies, and to leave a mark that whispers our name to the future. What binds the cosmic precision of Angkor Wat to the cliff-carved communities of Mesa Verde is a breathtaking capacity for adaptation. these civilizations did not simply conquer their environments, they learned to listen to them. The Nabateans of Petra mastered the hydrology of a desert. The ancestral Pueblones developed agricultural symbiosis with a parched land. The Inca engineered earthquake-resistant structures that moved with the earth, not against it. Their innovations were born from a deep, necessary conversation with the natural world, a dialogue we are urgently relearning today. In their successes, we find inspiration for sustainable living. In their abandonments, often linked to ecological change or resource depletion, we find a powerful, cautionary echo for our own time. Yet, these places are more than just case studies in engineering or environmental science. They are the very soul of human culture. They are the canvases where beliefs were made tangible, where mythology was carved into doorways and painted onto walls. The serene faces of the moai guarding Rapa Nui, the vibrant processions frozen on the stairs of Persepolis, the sacred silence of the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, they all speak to a fundamental human need to connect with something greater than ourselves. They remind us that our greatest architectural achievements have always been, at their heart, expressions of faith, community, and the unending search for meaning. This legacy is not locked in the past, it is a living, breathing responsibility. The scars of conflict on the Citadel of Aleppo and the willful destruction at Palmyra are stark reminders that this heritage is fragile. It can be lost not only to the slow patience of nature but to the swift violence of humans. The ongoing work of archaeologists, conservators, and local communities to protect, restore, and understand these sites is a testament to our commitment to this shared inheritance. It is a promise to future generations that the stories etched in these stones will not be forgotten, that the lessons they hold will continue to be learned. So as we step back from this global tour, we are left not with a sense of an ending, but with an invitation to continue the exploration. These 20 wonders are just the beginning. Countless other stories are waiting in forgotten corners of the world, each with its own mystery to unravel. We hope this journey has ignited your curiosity, that it has offered a new perspective on the depth of human history and the incredible tapestry of our collective ingenuity. Your thoughts and conversations are what keep this history alive. Which of these hidden ruins speaks to you most powerfully? Do you have a personal story of visiting one or another that captivates your imagination? Share your experiences and ideas in the comments below. We truly love reading them. If you enjoyed traveling through time with us, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more journeys into the incredible. Thank you for watching.